Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Strategy Game podcast. I've got special guest Mike Brown here today, and so honored to have you, Mike, with us. And tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from.
Yeah, thanks. I'm super excited to be here. So I am currently a investor and business coach, and I can kind of give you my story to how I got to that point. I grew up in Midland, Texas, which is kind of the oil and gas capital of the U.S., and that becomes important later. But I grew up and I always knew two things. I wanted to be in the Navy and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I went to the Naval Academy for college and graduated in 2003, and then went on to flight school and ended up flying F-18s for the Navy. And I spent 10 years doing that, and it was just an incredible way to spend your 20s. I served a combat tour in Iraq in 2007, 2008 aboard the USS Truman, flying missions from the carrier, 75 combat missions. And then in 2009, moved to San Diego and spent my next tour teaching Marines and SEALs how to call in airstrikes. I got out in 2011 and moved back to my hometown. I had a mentor growing up that told me that it was the best time in the history of the oil business to be in the oil business. And I went to work for him for a couple years and founded my own firm in 2013. And my mentor was right. It was the best time in the history of the oil business to be in the oil business. And what we were doing was, I founded it with my business partner, who was also a guy I flew with in Iraq, and we would go back to the ship at night after a long mission and pour a tall glass of whiskey, which is super illegal on the boat, and talk about how well we worked together in combat and how we should start a company someday. So fast forward to 2013, that's exactly what we did, and basically we were buying up properties that mineral properties and package them up and sell them to private equity backed firms. And so we did that from 2013, and then exited that company in 2019. And like I said, it was a really great time to be in that space, and a rising tide lifts all boats, and that ended up being a pretty big win for us.
Yeah.
And then during that time, I also started angel investing in 2014 and started mentoring the companies that we invested in, and started, basically having other startups come to me and ask for advice based on those recommendations. And I enjoyed doing that so much that kind of after, a year and a half or so of kind of just doing that on the side or for free, I realized that, hey, maybe this is something that I could really make a run at as a career. And so launched my coaching business about a year ago. And that kind of brings us up to speed.
I love that. Do you think, this is a random question, but it came to me, do you think if you hadn't grown up in Texas, there might have been a chance that you wouldn't have launched that company?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, look, people talk about privilege a lot, and there's certainly a lot of that in anybody's story. I mean, a massive privilege for me was growing up where I grew up. This is a super niche industry within an industry, and it's definitely not something I would have known about without virtue of having this family friend that kind of told me about it. So that is a very much right place, right time scenario. The other side of privilege, though, is what we do with that privilege. And, a lot of times what people do is discount the good decisions that are made on the backside of that opportunity, right? We all have opportunities in life. And, unfortunately, everyone's opportunities, are different, right? And yes, I mean, if I was growing up in the inner city of Chicago, this is not an opportunity that would have presented itself. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that grew up in the same place I did that, maybe didn't get that opportunity or make the same decisions that I did once presented with that door. So, I think that we have to recognize the privilege that we grew up with, but at the same time, also give ourselves credit for good decisions that we made along the way.
Absolutely. I love that answer. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that because I think that's so true. Now, tell me about how it was possible to have that quick of a turnaround because we've been working with a lot of startups, right, for over a decade with our family office, and typically the turnaround is not that quick. So, what made that happen? I'm sure it was in large part due to, you know, um, you and your operations, but also like what was happening there?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, it is a lot about timing, and it was an incredible time to be in this space. I mean, around that 2011 time was really when this boom started taking off, kind of the shale revolution, where they could drill horizontally and unlock reserves that were previously thought, to be unrecoverable. So
Mm.
that fueled this massive rush, massive land grab in the Permian Basin, which is where Midland is. And a lot of companies were buying up properties and with massive drilling programs. And so we were able to get ahead of that, and the properties that we were buying, uh, you know, uh, went up significantly in value during that time. So there was certainly a huge timing aspect of it. But the other thing that we did was just relentlessly buy call options on ourselves, and we were not taking money out of the business. We were reinvesting every single dime and growing a portfolio for ourselves that also, went up significantly in value during that time. And then, about 2018, started, looking at the risk analysis on our portfolio and started realizing that, like, hey, it feels like there's more downside than upside running room here, right? And now the risk has actually gone from, upside to protecting the downside. And I always say, as an investor, I'd rather take my half out of the middle, right? I'd rather live in between the 20-yard lines and not try and time a bottom and not try and time a top, but just take the good chunk out of the growth. And we were really fortunate with our timing. I mean, we sold, I guess, in July of 19, and the market crashed in March of 20 with COVID. So, we were really fortuitous to have timed that market right and exited, prior to the top.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, what an accomplishment. So congratulations on that. It's really remarkable. I love hearing the story, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your work now on the coaching side of things. So tell us what you're seeing with the leaders that you're working with right now. I love to recognize any common themes or threads. And before we got on this recording, we were talking a little bit about that identity-based strategy piece. That's how I translate it. I'm convinced that who we are, as a person, the experiences that we've been through, good and bad, shape us. And sometimes those themes come out in our brands or the work that we do. And so when we're able to find resolve or healing in those issues, right, then we're able to be healthy and fully, I think, operate the way that we're supposed to operate. So I'd love to hear about your take on that and the work that you do with the life and the business strategy.
Yeah, definitely. So, my coaching journey really starts, I think, as most people does, with a personal journey of discovery. And in 2016, I basically woke up and realized that I had done all of the things in my life that I was supposed to do. I was a combat veteran. I had started this incredible company and provided my family, a life that I could only dream of, and had all of the things and had done all of the things that society tells us is going to make us happy. And I woke up with kind of a giant hole in my soul and realized that something still was missing, right? I had done the things that we're supposed to do to make us happy, and yet, here I was, and it felt like there was a missing piece of the puzzle. And so that really started me down this kind of personal development rabbit hole. And at the same time, I was working with a lot of veterans and donating a lot of money to charity organizations that serve veterans, and so kind of went down this self-discovery journey, and through a lot of different modalities, including hiring my own coach and going down that route, reading a bunch of personal development books. I got into meditation and just really kind of had this transformation and realized that my life had essentially always been externally validated. I was always, comparing myself to others, and there's a tendency, I think, in psychotherapy and kind of what we do to look at our childhood and then blame our parents for certain things that patterned us. And it's important to realize that your parents absolutely did the best they could with what they have. And I grew up with 5 children in my family, and my mom was a hard driver, and I'm super grateful for that. But it actually created this pattern, the subconscious pattern for me, that achievement equals love, right? Yeah. The more we achieve, the more love we garner from those around us, and that served me really well. It's what allowed me to go to a really difficult college and get into the JET program and perform really well there, and then start this company. So it served me really well until it didn't, right? Because if that's your subconscious programming, that achievement equals love, and you achieve all the things that you're supposed to, and then you still have this hole in your soul, like, what else are you going to do? And what happens is a lot of people never get off that train. They just try and start a bigger company and find more success, and they're always chasing this idea. And what I realized, through all these various modalities, was I had to get right with myself, and I had to love myself regardless of any, external achievements. And so that's really what I learned about myself. And that journey then allows me to go and take that message to the entrepreneurs that I coach. Right. And so, kind of like what we were talking about, ultimately, I believe there are no business problems. There are only personal problems that show up in business. And what a lot of those problems are is subconscious programming that affects our decision-making in a way that we're not aware of. Right. And so what I talk to my clients about is this kind of personal development cycle. And there's 4 stages. The first one is awareness, which is, hey, I'm aware that there's some subconscious programming running here. The next is insight, which is, okay, now I can look at maybe my childhood or some other trauma that occurred in my life and see where this pattern might have come from. And a lot of times in this kind of personal development loop, people get stuck in the insight phase. They keep diving the rabbit hole, trying to figure out all of these different things that happened in their childhood. What they're missing is step 3, though, and that's action. Okay, now that I've recognized where this comes from, I've got to start taking some steps to recognize when I'm acting out of trauma response, and either have some sort of exercise or do some sort of work to change that patterning. And then at that point is where we get to integration, which is where you become at choice with that pattern and recognize that, hey, this is a thing that drives me. And now I can recognize it and actually not have it drive me out of lack or out of subconscious programming, but I can choose whether that's a thing that I want to have affect my decision making.
That's amazing. You guys can't, if you're listening to the podcast and not watching, I'm just shaking my head the whole time because I just agree. I agree so much with all of this. And this is my personal journey has been similar. And over the past year, I've had the opportunity to be in a group. I've done a lot of personal work over the years, but to be in this thing called a growth group. And it's so fascinating. Jessica Jeans, who hopefully we'll have on this podcast, has written this curriculum alongside of actually her mom, who was the founder of Women Revealed. It's an incredible organization. And they talk about woundology and really the core of each wound and how it comes out in different ways. So my woundology is, I think, a little bit similar to yours. I associate achievement with love, which has created tremendous things, right? I'm a driver for sure. I can get things done. I create new things. Like I'm constantly, moving in that direction. But I think I've had some similar realizations over the past few years. At what cost? I think I'm always asking myself, at what cost? And I have boundaries in place now because I realize that no matter how much I achieve, it's really not about that. It's about just the fulfillment and the contentment of right where I am here and now, and being solid in myself and with my family. So it's just been a big adjustment. It's definitely a mindset shift, but there's so much that And I talk about this too. When you said the subconscious, that was so good, because we've got to move our subconscious to our conscious mind a lot more. If we can do that every day, I think we would be really different. I think we'd be really aware, like self-aware on the regular, right? But we've got so much that's pushing us down and weighing us down that it's really tough to get to that place. Do you ever find when you're working with leaders that it's tough for them to get to that place, because it is creating new patterns?
Totally. Yeah. I mean that's our work, right? Is recognizing that subconscious and creating new ones. But there's a lot of techniques that you can use to try and accelerate that self-awareness and close that cycle and shorten it down, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely see, I mean, there are certain ways to heal core wounds and really, kind of remove those from the programming. But a lot of times they're going to just show up in different and more subtle ways. And so you've kind of always got to be vigilant and have the self-awareness to say, the question that I use with my clients is real or trauma, right? When they're faced with some decision or they're feeling stuck, or they're in an argument, go, okay, if 50 people looked at what I'm looking at right now, would 50 of them feel the same way I do? Or would they look at this and be like, hey, your reaction is not consummate with what the actual situation is, right? And that's I think a good gauge to determine if we're in trauma or trigger response, or if we're actually using our logical mind to look at the situation at hand. So the other piece that I really talk about a lot is internal versus external locus of control. And, basically, a lot of us can recognize what an external locus of control is. This would be a victim mindset. Everything is happening to me. The world is against me, and blaming external factors for everything that happens in your life. Well, that's not typically the affliction of the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What entrepreneurs typically have is a much more internal locus of control. And again, this can be really positive, right? Hey, I'm the captain of my own destiny. Everything that I do, affects my life, and I'm in charge of my own outcomes. The problem is, though, is that can become really toxic if taken to too much of an extreme. If you shoulder the responsibility for everything that happens in your personal life and in your company, that can actually really create a massive amount of stress. And so here's a perfect example of this happening right now, which is, Apple and Facebook are kind of having this feud, and a lot of e-commerce businesses who, depended on Facebook ads for their revenue are seeing a decline in the return on ad spend because, Apple made these changes to their policies. Okay, that is an external event that is affecting a lot of businesses right now. But if the leader of that organization is shouldering that and saying, well, what can I do differently, and blaming themselves, they can actually get in a really dangerous cycle of taking something on that's not theirs. Yeah. And especially if their identity is wrapped up in their business. And this is something we see a lot, right? I am my business. And if my business is doing well, then I'm doing well. If my business is not doing well, now I'm beating myself up, having negative self-talk, even falling into depression. And we have to start separating ourselves from our business and realize that a business is its own entity. It has a life of its own. And there are external and internal things that drive the growth or failure of a business. Some of those things we can control, like our culture and our internal policies, but a lot of those things we can't control. External factors like market timing, in the case of my business, or, changes from Apple and Facebook, or, whatever it may be. And if you can offload some of that responsibility and realize it's not your fault and stop beating yourself up and let yourself off the hook, that allows you to make better decisions to then move forward and find other solutions without the guilt and the self-loathing that typically accompanies, a decline.
So good. Yeah, that's so true. What are you seeing as you work with clients on the business strategy side of things? Any threads or themes that might be helpful to share, with our listeners? Like any themes throughout your coaching on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, right now, this external versus locus of control or internal locus of control is what I'm seeing most because,
Mm,
especially if you look at the last year, right?
yeah,
There are so many factors that have changed business, perhaps forever, but at least for the medium term, related to COVID and everything that we've been dealing with. And one thing that we don't recognize often is how this pandemic has actually affected mental health, right? And this
absolutely.
has been hard, right?
Yeah,
And the first thing that everyone has to admit to themselves is like, hey, life has changed drastically since March of 2020,
yeah,
and there, whether you're hardcore quarantining and really following all the procedures in place, or you're less considerate of the virus, it doesn't really matter. There's still a lot of hardship that's been generated, and we see a lot of hardship in business. There's a lot of headwinds happening, changing buying patterns and just a lot of different things that affect business. And so giving yourself grace and being easy on yourself in the face of the fact that, it's been a difficult year and
yeah,
you don't actually realize how much mental capacity is taken up by just the new changes, logistical changes in life.
mhm,
Having to consider, how many people are gathering at a place and wearing masks and the different things that we used to do for fun, maybe that we can't do anymore, like going out to a bar or whatever it is. All of that takes up some sort of mental load
yeah,
and decreases capacity for other things. And so just first of all, being easy on ourselves and recognizing that this is really difficult, and pat yourself on the back, and no matter, even if you think you're not struggling, there are certain things that are affecting your life right now, and be easy on yourself about that and give yourself grace. So that's
yeah,
a thing, definitely something that I see happening right now a lot is people being really hard on themselves for things they can't control.
yeah.
Uh, so that's probably the biggest theme that I've encountered just over and over right now.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's so true. I've said this to a few friends. I think that I'm not sure that as a whole we've recognized that we all to a certain extent have been in trauma for the last year. It sounds extreme to say that out loud, but it's true. I think about it, and everything that we thought has been altered this past year, in one way or another. So I think just that recognition is really huge, and permission to give ourselves grace. So good.
And that word trauma is really triggering in itself for a lot of people, because when they hear trauma, they think sexual abuse or physical abuse, or something that's really horrible that's happened to people. But the way I define trauma is actually just any event that creates a subconscious program, right?
Yeah.
So if I say, hey, this subconscious program of achievement equals love is trauma, that might make some people be like, oh wow, that sounds like you're really overblowing what happened to you as a kid. It sounds like you had a really great parent. I did have a really great parent,
Right.
right? And it created this subconscious loop around this particular idea.
Yeah.
That's what trauma is, right? And it's not the trauma Olympics. What we often do is we don't give credit to our own traumas, because we always compare ourselves to someone else
So
and
true.
go, well, yeah, but I didn't have it as bad as that person. So who am I to,
Yes.
recognize my own pain? And the thing is, pain isn't relative, right? Yes, people with history of abuse in their life do have to deal with a lot of pain,
Yeah.
but people who didn't have abuse in their life still have their own pain, and it feels equal to them and their subconscious, right?
Absolutely.
And so minimizing our own pain by comparing our trauma to that of others is really one of the nastiest patterns that we can fall into, because everyone has some sort of pain in their life, and recognizing what yours is, whether it's that your dog died and that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you,
Yeah.
that still feels like something that's really important, and we can't compare ourselves to the trauma of other people.
Yes, that's so good. We talk a lot about comparison in the masterclass and the life strategy portion of it. And then one thing that's really been top of mind for me too is like seeing, hearing, and knowing people where they are and in that pain. So I think I do this on a daily basis. I can discount others. Oh man, well, I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or they don't really see. But I think I've slowed down a lot this year to say, No, the priority is seeing and knowing and hearing people right where they are. And to them, it feels just as bad or equal or good or whatever they're feeling, right? And so it's just recognizing that, I think. And I've also thought about this from just a business perspective. Like, what if we did this with our clients and the people that we serve first? Like, how would things change? How would our perspective change and our mindsets change? So it's just kind of been a theme for me throughout, I guess, the past couple years. So it's been
Yeah,
cool.
I love it. It's super important, right? I mean, the idea that comparison is the thief of joy is actually is really true, right? And that's, we see this in this externally validated achievement equals love pattern,
Yeah.
that if you're always benchmarking against what other people are doing, there's no room for self-love and acceptance in that equation.
Yeah, so true. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. There's just so much wisdom in here. I can't wait to even go back and listen to it. So I just really, really appreciate you. Also, for our listeners, catch Mike on the blog because he's on the lineup. So he contributes quarterly, which we're so thankful to have. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always appreciate it. It's great catching up.